Running a salon means making decisions all day long. Decisions for your team, your clients, and your business. Some are small and immediate, others quietly shape the future of everything that you've built. But the most important decisions always begin with questions. And some of the most powerful questions are the ones we actually avoid asking ourselves. Not because we don't care, but because we're afraid of what the answers might reveal. In today's episode, we're going to break down the questions salon owners are afraid to ask and why asking them can actually change everything for your business. Welcome to the Salon Scoop, the podcast that helps salon owners and salon professionals grow their business, boost their brand, and stay inspired. From salon marketing and social media to leadership and growth, we uncover the strategies and stories that move the industry forward. If you love learning, growing, and are serious about leveling up your salon business and brand, you've just found your new go-to podcast. Do you realize that the companies out there that have the most success, it's not because they have the best social media posts or because they have the most talented employees. It's because they're able to do the hard work behind the scenes. They have dug deep. They have thought through strategically. They have asked the right questions about their business. They've sought out information to allow them to build a solid strategy, to build proper systems that allow them to function effectively. This is what really generates success in business. And far too often, small business owners don't either take the time, they don't think about these things, and are not asking the right questions to be able to dig deeper to make sure they have all the information at their fingertips to make the right decisions. In today's episode, I've got with me salon owner Sarah Perrin from Chalk Salon, and she is also obviously on a lot of our episodes on Digital Debriefs. Sarah, thanks for joining me today to delve into this very important topic, and I'm sure you as a salon owner yourself are very attuned to.
Yes, and it's definitely something that has taken a while to get comfortable with, because a lot of these conversations and these questions that you have to ask are kind of uncomfortable. And sometimes you're getting feedback and critique that you maybe don't want to hear. But I know one of the best books I've ever read as a business owner was Fierce Conversations by Susan Scott. And I want to say it was like the opening line of that book was, and I'm just kind of going off, this isn't word for word, but essentially like the trajectory of our entire lives are based like one conversation at a time. And it sounds so simple, but it's so true. Like you can't change things unless you talk about it, unless you know, like you don't know what you don't know. And oftentimes that starts with asking some of these uncomfortable questions. And that's kind of the only way that growth can happen, is by sometimes putting yourself in kind of an uncomfortable position. So I hope that I tried to kind of get questions that have been ones that have come up in my own life as a salon owner that I've had to talk to clients, employees, myself about. And yeah, I feel like it's a really good time to reflect, at the top of a new year and maybe start asking some of these uncomfortable questions.
Yeah, and you absolutely cannot grow if you don't push past your comfort zone. That's, the definition of growing. If you just stay in your comfort zone, then you're not changing, you're not growing. So we have to push through. I'm a classic avoider personality, and I have to really push myself sometimes to have difficult conversations with people. And I've found that as difficult as it is, when I actually do have the conversation, as long as I can prepare myself and make sure that it's not at an emotional level, but you're doing it in a respectful way with integrity, just being honest, transparent with someone, you can have very kind conversations about difficult topics. And when you get through it, you're like, wow, I'm so glad that we actually had that conversation. Because otherwise you're left, when you avoid things, both parties are just making these assumptions about what's going on, and we're sort of like reading the scene. We're so often creating these stories in our head that are not true, and it's just providing no service to anybody. So please, if you're an avoider type as well, or just feel uncomfortable in certain situations, we hope that you gain some strength from this episode and learn not just why some of these questions and having some of these conversations are important, but how to go about it. So, Sarah, I'm going to start by quizzing you from the context of either salon owner or really any salon professional, and questions that you might be afraid to ask your clients. And maybe if you can give us some insights as to how to handle those. So here's a question that I think is really important to be asking, is asking your clients, how does this experience fit into your life right now? Why would you ask that, first of all? And what's the importance of getting that information?
I feel like, again, just figuring out what their priorities are. Like, how does this fit into your life? Is it still something that is financially viable? Is it still something that time wise is viable? Is it something that you enjoy doing? Or is it just this awkward thing that you feel kind of obligated to do now that you've been seeing me for so long? So I think having those conversations with your clients can be super uncomfortable, because sometimes you might hear things that you don't want to hear 100%. But I feel like, again, just kind of opening the dialogue for that one and just getting their insight maybe will allow you as the service provider to accommodate where you can, or if it's not something you can accommodate to make it fit better within their life, then you can have other solutions. So we did an episode about this just recently about why clients leave. And one of the biggest things is that there is a lack of communication. So I think by asking them, where does this fit in your life? Is this a major priority? How can we shift it to fit better within your lifestyle, your budget, et cetera, et cetera? It just kind of creates that open line of communication. So if something doesn't start or stops working for them, then they feel comfortable enough to communicate that with you, and you guys can come up with a solution instead of them just kind of quietly leaving and not returning.
Yeah. And you don't need to guess and you don't need to make assumptions, right? Just have the conversation, and it's going to help you create better trust. You're going to create a deeper connection with that guest of yours. Okay. The next question that I believe should be asked is, asking your guest, what almost stopped you from booking your next appointment?
And this honestly ties kind of back into what we were talking about before. Again, all of this, it's going to have a very similar narrative. It's creating something that is comfortable for that. Like, you're becoming a safe space where they can actually tell you. So it might be that, like, was it price? Was it time? Were they confused about something? So again, just minimizing any point of friction with your client and just having that conversation. If you do say, like, can we get you booked for your next appointment? And they just straight up say no. No is an answer as well. You don't need to dive into it deeper necessarily. But if you are comfortable, and I think a big thing with a lot of these questions as well is you need to remember the 3 T's: timing, tone, and turf. You don't want to be asking it in an abrasive way. You don't want to put them on the spot and make them uncomfortable. You want to make sure that you're asking it in a kind way, that they're not feeling attacked. Like, why aren't you
Yeah.
booking your next appointment, right? Like,
Yes, Sarah. Why didn't you
yeah,
book your next appointment with me, Sarah?
idiot. So, like, you have to obviously come about it in a very kind way. So you could just say, that's totally fine. I'm just, like, out of curiosity. Is it like, do you not know what your schedule is? Is there, an issue with pricing, or maybe you just want to wait it out? Like, I'm just curious, so that I can best accommodate you. And maybe if it's a matter of the fact that you don't know what your schedule looks like in 3 months, then I can send out a reminder text to you that it's about that time and we can get you booked in then. So it
And
kind
I
of even
wouldn't
levels up that guest experience too.
Totally, yeah. And I wouldn't feed them potential answers like, is it because of this? Is it because of this? I would ask the open-ended questions. Very important that you ask open-ended questions so that they can't just answer, a quick yes or no, because you're not actually getting information out of that. And then you also need to be a little bit okay in the discomfort of silence. When you ask that open-ended question, let them tell you, because otherwise, again, you're assuming and you're kind of starting to put words in their mouth just because you're uncomfortable and trying to sort of kind of fight yourself. So
I
just
am that
asking,
person. I do that
just
all the
ask,
time. So
oh, for sure. It's natural for most of us when we're in an uncomfortable situation. So, if you ask, then you might say they've been pre-booking in the past and all of a sudden they don't. The question could be, I noticed you used to pre-book and you haven't the past couple of visits. Can you tell me anything about why you are no longer, booking your next appointment in advance? Simple question. So you might be framing the question slightly differently based on the scenario, but it's an important question to be asking. All right, here's another one for you that people probably never ask, but really should is, do you feel recognized when you're here?
Yeah, and I feel like feeling based questions that isn't just as simple as, I didn't pre-book my next appointment because I don't know what my schedule is like, or the price is too high. Like something where it is getting kind of more to the deeper bones of everything. And I would say this is definitely something that you're going to want to have these conversations more with, like clients that you've been seeing for a while, like somebody's first time in your chair and it's 10 minutes in. Do you feel recognized here? They might be like, where am I right now? I thought I booked for a hair appointment, not a therapy appointment, right? So but like I've had these types of conversations with my long-term clients, and I kind of frame it in a way like experience is top priority for our entire company and for me specifically. And I just want to know, like, what is your experience like here? Do you feel recognized? Do you feel like not only you're getting a great service, but you leave feeling better than you came in? And getting that feedback, like sometimes people are like, oh my gosh, of course, everybody knows my name when I come in, and exactly, like you remember that I told you my sister-in-law had surgery 3 months ago and you asked about it, like all of these different things. And like you remember that I got this nail color 2 years ago and I was wanting to try it again. And you were like, no, I remember you didn't like that. So just like basic little things like that, but definitely framing it, especially with your kind of longer term clients, so that you can get a real honest answer so that maybe you can adjust things moving forward for newer clients to make sure that they feel recognized at every appointment.
Yeah, and you'll find this is a question that most people don't ask, but as Sarah, you just said, if it's with a more longer term client and they do get asked that, it's going to make them feel special. It's going to be like, wow, you actually care, and something might happen. And I think this next question is kind of in a similar vein, and it's a great question to ask: is what would make this experience even better for you?
Yes, and this is something. So, what we actually do at my salon is after every single appointment, there is an automated questionnaire that follows after. So, even if you feel a little bit uncomfortable, especially with like a newer client or something like that, being what could we have done differently to make this experience better? Because sometimes they feel like they're put on the spot and they're like, well, your front end person could have been nicer and said hey to me without me just having to stand in the front for 10 minutes. Or someone could have offered to take my jacket, or I would have loved a longer scalp massage, whatever it might be. So we like to send out this questionnaire, and people are honest with it, and we do review them and adjust accordingly. With your longer term clients, if you do feel more comfortable, look, we're really focusing on guest experience here. I'm just wondering if there's something specifically during your service that we could have done differently today to kind of level up that experience. And then if you're uncomfortable asking those questions face to face, then an online questionnaire just linked after their appointment is a really easy way to do that.
Great insights, Sarah. Thank you so much for that. So remember, it's not, these questions are not just about, I might be losing this client or whatever. You're actually at the same time, it's getting feedback. It's asking important questions that's going to give you real information that's really important to be improving the overall experience that you can provide. And that's ultimately improving your overall business and your offering and making you more relevant, making you more appealing, more attractive as a service provider and as a business as a whole. So remember, these questions are very, very poignant, as we talked about at the beginning, to just be properly. It's almost like doing internal research about your business, and that's the thing about the questionnaire, Sarah, that you talked about is really critical to be doing that and having some actual conversations to get tangible feedback. Your customers are often going to be really happy to participate, and they'll feel like they are heard.
For sure. So now that we've kind of talked about a few of the different questions that you can ask your clients, we're going to kind of dive into some questions you can ask your employees. So I'm going to put you in the hot seat, Scott, and I'm going to ask you the question. And then, because I feel like this is great for every industry. I mean, I'm technically one of your employees. We've had conversations like this, before, where what's working, what's not working. So as a business owner, I feel like these are some good questions to keep in your back pocket to review how everything's going. Employee experience is, I would say, more important now with like the newer generation than it ever has been. So having that open, comfortable, safe space to have these conversations is super important. So the first question I will ask you is, do you feel supported in this business or just managed?
Nice. Okay, so this is an important question to be asking your staff, your employees, because it kind of opens the door up for them to provide some feedback about how they feel they're being coached or mentored or trained, and where the support level is. And if you don't ask these questions, then you're just making assumptions in your head. You're thinking, "Oh, everything is fine. You know what? They seem to like me." And but you have to have the conversation. And when you do, it also makes the employee feel like they're being properly supported just by asking the question. Is a level of showing that you care about their input, you care about their ideas, and you listen to what's important to them. So asking that question is really, really critical from that standpoint. And having that support and the employee feeling supported is actually going to help create some stability and help, in one capacity, to strengthen retention of staff at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's easy as an owner to get stuck in that owner mindset. And you're dealing with all of these owner issues and not really thinking about the service provider issues. So opening up the floor to them to be able to tell you these things, they might be, again, another quote from that Fierce Conversations is, if there is an issue in any part of your business, there's an issue in every part of your business. And even as an owner, something like the water not getting hot enough quick enough for the stylists, or something that is affecting how they do their job, can make a huge difference. So it's important for them to be able to communicate that with you, which kind of leads into the next question, which would be, what makes your job harder than it needs to be?
Yeah, that's a great question that we should be asking employees, because again, it opens the door for us as an owner, as a leader, as a manager, to understand and listen to some of the challenges that might be there that we're not aware of. And these are typically challenges with the systems and the structures. It's not necessarily just about the people and what makes my job harder. It's because Susie next to me is complaining all the time. Sure, that might be part of it, but it's going to allow you to learn important information, and in many cases you'll be able to take all that information that you're getting from everybody and make sometimes small improvements that are going to have a big impact, and your team, your employees, are going to feel valued, that you listened to their feedback and took action that's actually making their life easier. Remember this: people don't quit their companies, people quit their boss. This is a hard reality, but it's the truth in probably 80 to 90% of cases. So if you are asking these questions, you're encouraging feedback and you're showing yourself as a boss that actually cares about inclusion, about engagement of your team. And this way it allows you to see things in your business that you may not have otherwise known about.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And I think it kind of leads beautifully into the next question, which could be the difference of them staying long term or not. But having open conversations with your employees and saying, do you see yourself growing here long term?
Yeah, right. What a great question that you should be asking to your team. You should be having, at the very least, a monthly kind of one-on-one meeting with each staff member where you can be reviewing their goals, but you want to be looking at it more sort of like big picture, right? Goals, objectives, and at the same time, every now and then asking them, how do you see yourself growing here over time, allows them to express what's important to them and for you to understand their motivations. Some people want growth. Some people want stability. Some people care more about freedom and flexibility. When you understand these differences, it can lead you to manage people differently and find solutions that are going to make your employees more satisfied. It's not always about the money. Don't get caught up on that. And having this clarity really prevents any underlying resentment, feeling like you as an owner don't care or not listened to. So ask these questions. It really opens up the dialogue and strengthens your communication and ultimately the relationship that you have with your team, which in the end helps to strengthen retention.
For sure. And this is, I would love just to tie back to another podcast that we did where I was talking about how we have this kind of choose your own career path and where we have different levels of management. Some people want that more flexibility, some people want more structure, some people want to eventually chair rent. So, from having these conversations and asking these things to our employees, we learned that even though we think that the system that we had in place was great and everybody wants, this level of structure, that's not always the case. So having that kind of led into this new program that we had, whereby we can have these conversations and say, what does your future look like? And they say, I absolutely love the platinum program while I was building my clientele. Now I feel like I want to kind of freebird it a little bit more, and maybe I'll transition into gold where I have a little bit more flexibility. So asking these questions sometimes can like prompt a new idea that can take your business to the next level and be super attractive and appealing to potential employees, whereas if you hadn't asked this initial question, you wouldn't have even had this idea. So I think that that's just an important thing to keep in mind. And finally, I think that this is such a huge thing, and very rarely are employees asked this. And we in our salon will do this on a one-to-one meeting, so it's not as uncomfortable. And then also at every single staff meeting, we ask this as well. We frame it a little bit different to kind of keep it a little bit lighter, but what feedback have you been holding back? So we always like to ask, does anyone have any grievances they need to air? And we've gotten to the point where that it's a comfortable, safe space where people can actually say, this has been pissing me off. I don't like this. I really like this, whatever it might be. So I think that's another important question to ask as well.
Yeah, I agree. And because it might not always be negative feedback, but sometimes we assume that if no one's saying anything, that everything is okay. Typically, that's not the case. What it typically means is that if they're being quiet, it's that maybe they don't feel safe enough to express themselves properly and to speak up, either publicly in a meeting or even just coming to you privately. But when you ask that question of people, it helps to create that space for them to share, which helps to build trust, to build that safety for them to know that they can express themselves and that you are going to listen. And it helps to avoid small, maybe little frustrations kind of building up and becoming a big thing where someone all of a sudden like blows up with a huge issue, or maybe, or even worse, just decides that they have to leave. Whereas it could have been dealt with way earlier if you had given them the safe space to talk about it and to be able to address it and hopefully, fix it, squash it in its early stages. So those are great questions, Sarah. Thank you for asking that we should be asking our staff. We're going to finish this section with some introspective questions. And these are questions that salon owners are afraid to ask themselves, but should be asking themselves. Personal leadership starts from within. And some of the most important growth happens when you turn those questions inward and are able to reflect. So, Sarah, here's some questions that I think are important for salon owners to ask themselves. Maybe you can reflect upon this as a salon owner yourself and share with us what the value is. The first one is, am I truly leading or am I just surviving?
So I'm going to try to not repeat myself a million times because I feel like a lot of these questions do come back to the same baseline idea is are you leading or are you surviving? Because that is a big thing with being a salon owner. But being busy doesn't mean being effective. And this question definitely helps to separate reactive owners from intentional ones. And it's definitely something I've asked myself multiple times. But yeah, you have to just baseline, don't even get into any of the details. Are you surviving or are you just leading? And oftentimes I feel like we are just in survival mode, which then can lead into other questions that you can dive deeper into, kind of figure out how to lead and be effective and not just trying to keep your head above water.
Yeah, that's an important one. Otherwise, we're just stuck in that vicious cycle forever and ever. Okay, another question that salon owners should be asking themselves: what am I holding on to out of control rather than necessity?
This comes back to the being busy doesn't mean you're being effective. You need to learn how to delegate, and that can be one of the hardest things to do as a business owner of any kind. So, DIY marketing, over managing, avoiding delegation, as I said, it's control feels safe. And sometimes I know I'm super guilty of this, that I'm like, it's just easier to do it myself. And I know that it's being done right, or the amount of time it's going to take me to train somebody to do it and then have to go back and make the corrections. It's easy to make those mistakes, but you kind of have to figure out what your zone of genius is and delegate the rest. And that can be very hard to relinquish that control, but it allows you more time to actually be focusing on working on your business as opposed to just in it.
And in this, I would say you need to let go of your ego. Too often, that's what holds us to things, right? That holding on to control over things. But look at it. If I was ask yourself, if I hired an external business consultant to come in and sort of analyze what's going on here, would they be recommending that I'm, doing these things, that I'm holding on to these certain things? Or would they be recommending that I focus my attention elsewhere? And if you can try to step out of your own shoes and look at it like, what's the best thing for the business? I think that's why asking that question is super important, because it can provide some insights that can really help you. All right. How about this one, Sarah? Is my business built to support my life or to consume it?
These all tie so closely together, and these baseline questions are the most important, because I know, like, I've owned my salon with my sister since 2014, and I would say majority of that amount of time has been just being absolutely and utterly consumed by it, to the point where you start to resent it. And I think just really taking a look back, and over the last few years, it's definitely been something that I have tried to start delegating and letting go of some of that control so that it isn't consuming every moment of my life. Choosing to be a business owner, there is a different level of responsibility that comes along with that. And I think we all know that when we get into it. But like you said, it really does tie back to ego. I remember one of the biggest things with myself was I was taking on 6 days a week of clients, 12-hour days. And I was also trying to do marketing and run the business. And I was so stressed out. And I was talking to a therapist one time about it. And she was like, I don't mean for this to offend you, but she's like, do you think you're the only person that knows how to do nails? And I was like, I never really thought about it like that, because I'm like, it wasn't coming from this place of me being like, I'm the best at this or anything like that. It genuinely wasn't. So why was I treating it like I was the only one that was capable of doing it? And I think that that relates to so many different aspects of your business, with bookkeeping or marketing or whatever it might be. You kind of almost have to take a look in the mirror and get real with yourself. You think that you're doing such a great job of this, but if you've got your hand in every pot in your business, you're not able to put 100% into every single thing. So then things are going to be lacking. So having to be very honest with yourself and not letting every single thing consume you.
All right. Last question. And I really love this one to ask yourself is, if I stepped away for a month, what would break first? Why is this an important question, Sarah?
Okay, this is also another funny one. I feel like I'm just spilling my entire life story out, but I'm lucky enough. I have a business partner, and it has taken over a decade to figure out what our roles are within that business, because you don't want to take on every single role. But as the business owner, we always use the analogy of, if I was to get struck by lightning or just like drop dead tomorrow, would you be able to run the business without me? So that means that, like, looking at it, so before we kind of had these conversations, if I was to drop dead tomorrow, would she know how to do all of the marketing? Would she know where all the design stuff is? Would she know anything like that? And then if same thing went for her, would I know how to do payroll? Would I know how to do taxes? Would I know how to pay remittance? All of these different things. So as a business owner, I don't think it's necessary to be a master at every single one of these things, but you do have to look at it. And if you got sick, or if you went on a 2-month hiatus, a little sabbatical, whatever it might be, what areas of your business would fail first? So that means that even if you're not the one that is doing those, you need to make sure that you have systems in place and people delegated to do those things, because nothing is guaranteed. And I think that that's just a super important thing. Stay in your lane, stay in your zone of genius, but you have to have all of those things covered. So sitting back and saying, would marketing be the issue? Would communication, would training, would leadership, would retention be the issue? If you were not there, and then game plan so that those things would work and run smoothly if you were not there for some reason.
Yeah, it's going to help you to build systems to tackle the important things that are going to break down. Isn't everybody out there listening saying, man, I would love to be able to take a month vacation at some point and leave the business and feel like it was going to be okay? So ask yourself that question. Like, if I did leave for a month, what would be the first thing that would go wrong? And then you can start to identify all those things. And like you said, Sarah, game plan, start building systems, putting things in place, maybe delegating certain things. And that could be a long-term vision for you. Maybe it's a year away, maybe it's 2 years away, but it's not as far as you think if you really put in the effort. And everybody should have the opportunity to do that. You're not supposed to be strapped to your chair as the business owner, that you have to be there all the time in order for it to function properly. That is not the reason why you owned a business in the first place. Okay, enough talk. Hopefully you get the gist of it here today. Asking these questions is obviously extremely important, but it's just the start. It's what you actually do with the answers that you get, or the reflection that you pull out of it. That's where the real growth is going to happen. And as I started off with in the intro, all successful businesses, they do this stuff regularly. They're self-assessing. They're getting feedback from the different stakeholders, whether it's clients, whether it's employees, whether it's yourselves, management. You've got to ask the questions, take the information seriously, and utilize it to put in place better systems, better strategies to help you be a more sustainable business that has happy clients, happy staff equals happy owner. Hope you learned something, and make yourself a plan and some time to set aside to think about some of the questions that are most relevant that you want to start thinking about, and make a bit of a plan over the next month to start incorporating it and see the difference that just a couple of these questions and the insights that come from it can make in your business. Thanks for listening, everybody. Share with us your answers, your successes, and we look forward to catching up with you on our next episode. Thank you so much for listening to the Salon Scoop podcast. This show is produced by Salon S.O.S, a digital marketing agency by industry professionals for industry professionals. If you want simple and affordable solutions for any of your salon marketing needs, such as websites, client loyalty, Google search rankings, social media, or more, come visit us at salonsos.ca or on Instagram at salon.s.o.s. If you want to hear more episodes like this and help us continue to bring the industry great content, it would mean so much to us if you would support us in one of the following ways. Either share this episode with one other industry professional, and rate the show on Spotify, or write us a quick review on Apple Music. We want to hear your feedback. If you have follow-up questions or ideas for future episodes, please reach out. DM us on Instagram at salonus.s.o.s, or hit us up on our website again at salonsos.ca. Again, thanks so much for listening. Now go get your hustle on, keep smiling, and we'll catch you on our next episode.